Are you worried you won't have enough to play on the Nintendo Switch before E3? Well, don't be. We're here at GDC 2017 with the Nintendo Switch Nindie Showcase, checking out all the independent games coming to the Nintendo Switch in the first half of this year and beyond. The whole event is a big relief for gamers that were worried there wasn't going to be enough to play on the Nintendo Switch. And there might not be a lot of retail games coming out in the Switch's first 6 months, but there's a lot of independent games. And Nintendo's really committed to it, telling us today that you don't have to worry. There's going to be new games every week in the eShop, and we saw some of them today. Some of those games we already knew about, like Shovel Knight, Spectre of Torment, and Shakedown Hawaii, but there's also a bunch of new games that are exclusive to the Nintendo Switch. Like, remember that Blaster Master remake that was coming to the 3DS they announced last year? That's going to be a Nintendo Switch exclusive title. Well, really, Nintendo exclusive. And it's sort of an awesome remix. It looks and plays almost identical to the original, but it mixes the Japanese storyline, which was about a giant space battle, and the really cheesy American storyline was about a dude following his frog into a cave to play with tanks. But if you played the original Blaster Master, everything you loved is here. The same top-down mechanics, the same awesome music, and the same tank mode. Just there's a whole lot of new levels and a bunch of new features. Not every retro-style game for the Nintendo Switch is going to be based on an old property, though. We also saw Pocket Rumble, a really cool, simple, traditional fighting game. It's like a two-button Street Fighter, but the characters all kind of look like they popped out of a Game Boy. The game's actually also coming out on PC and maybe some other platforms. But on the Nintendo Switch, it's almost the perfect game for tablet mode. You can just plop the console down, pick it up, and each character gets one Joy-Con, and a surprisingly deep fighting game. Some of the games are clearly inspired by other popular titles. Remember Hotline Miami? If you added teleportation to that, you get Mr. Shifty, a fast-paced action title where you literally, from a top-down perspective, teleport around and just beat up the bad guys. There's not a lot of story, but the gameplay is incredible. There's also more relaxed games like Snake Path, which is sort of like a puzzle 3D platformer. There's no enemies and there's actually no jumping. So it's really more of a 3D climber. You take on the role of a snake and you have to climb your way through levels and slither around to find specific objects to unlock paths to new levels. It sounds really simple, but it's actually one of the most relaxing games I played at the showcase. If you just want to kick back and enjoy slithering, it's pretty good. There's also some fast-paced games here perfect for speedrunners, like Celeste, where you take on the role of a girl named Madeline who can sort of dash teleport across the screen to jump off walls, avoid obstacles, and work her way through 300 different levels. There's not too many enemies though, but if you want to find different ways to get through levels and love jumping puzzles, this one's for you. There's also a roguelike game, sort of. It's called Tumble Seed, and you need to guide a seed through, up a mountain pass so it could grow up, or it's kind of artistic, but it's interesting because instead of just normal basic controls where you use the D-pad and the joysticks to move around, you control a plane that the seed tumbles back and forth on and rolls left and right on, and the whole plane moves up through the level. It's one of those indie games that's really cool because it introduces a slightly different movement mechanic than you're used to. If you checked out the indie library on the Wii U, the PS4, PC, you're probably familiar with SteamWorld Dig. The official sequel is coming soon, called SteamWorld Dig 2, which follows the original game's sidekick character as you look for the protagonist of the original. It's just sort of more of the original platforming and the exploration of the original game. In fact, the developer on hand said it basically came about because they had a ton of leftover ideas and they just had to make another game. Of course, it wouldn't be an indie showcase without something that sort of explores something about the human condition, specifically death. This time, Flipping Death takes on that role. A really artistic, flat diorama-like game where you explore a world of two-dimensional characters on a 3D plane. Basically, it's a living diorama, and you need to help lost souls take care of their unfinished business. And whenever you're in the living world and you need to see what's going on in the death world, the game literally flips to the other side. Yeah, we get it. Graceful Explosion Machine kind of reminds me of Defender, except for with a lot more weapons. You're still a side-scrolling 2D spaceship exploring an interesting world, but you've got to fight an onslaught of waves of enemies, and each controller button has a different weapon that depletes your health as you go. It's actually really simple on the surface, but the game is built around building up combos and finding the best way to defeat enemies. It's a great modern take on an old concept. All in all, it was a great showcase with a ton of really cool independent titles. But really, it's this commitment to content that's important to the Nintendo Switch right now. Like I said earlier, the console is sort of launching without a lot of retail titles, and a lot of gamers were concerned that there isn't enough to play. It's a huge relief to see so many games promising to come out week after week for the Nintendo Switch. As indie titles, most of them are going to go for about $15 to $20, and the rollout will start from a bunch of games in March and will continue to roll out through the year.